Like snow arriving in the winter, one can always count on some sort of infighting between online conservatives.
This time, the verbal scuffle is between Daily Wire commentator Matt Walsh and podcast host Megyn Kelly.
Apparently, it all started last year. Kelly had appeared on the Chicks on the Right podcast where she was asked about the apparent beef.
Here is co-host Miriam Weaver asking Kelly about the situation in 2024.
There was some controversy happening at the time with Matt Walsh, and I know you had a beef with him recently on Twitter. He's always been the same guy when it comes to women have their place and that needs to be at home and they shouldn't have careers and all that stuff. And I remember that I asked you about it in that show, and you said, I just know that having a career and family, having that career makes me the best version of myself for my family.
And here was Kelly's response.
Having said that, I like the guy. I'm getting a little tired of his nonstop judgment of women who make different choices than the ones he wants us to make. Sorry, Matt, you're not our Jesus. We don't answer to you. We're not judging moms who choose to stay at home and raise their kids.
Absolutely
That's a
not.
choice we celebrate. We love. Those are our sisters and our friends and our moms. Women aren't doing this to other women for the most part. It's guys like Matt. Like, shut up.
Fast forward to today, and Walsh is now flipping the script on Kelly. Here he is on his show this week.
Keep in mind the language that Megyn just used. She said that I don't understand women. I'm trying to control women. I'm trying to tell women what to do. I'm trying to be, Jesus? I'm trying to be the Jesus of women or whatever. I'm judging women. I'm putting up guardrails. Now, I don't think that that's an accurate characterization at all, but I do think that these terms would pretty well describe Megyn's attitude towards young men.
Kelly made some comments in a recent show with Young Turks host Anna Kasparian. Kelly said that nowadays the young conservative women she talks to are actually having a hard time finding a man.
A lot of conservative women tend to be God-loving conservatives, and they can't find a lot of young men who want to marry a working woman now. And this is an actual problem that's coming up on the right. And to me, it's so sad because it's like, how did we get to the point where we're now telling young, conservative, amazing women that they're not attractive if they also work?
As a result, Walsh is saying that while Kelly is accusing him of not understanding women, she doesn't seem, in his view, to understand men. Here's Walsh explaining the gist of his argument.
Men and women are different. They are looking for different things, Megyn. A man might be attracted to a woman with a career, but he's not going to be attracted to her because of her career. And a woman who puts her career before anything, a woman who prioritizes her professional ambitions above all else, will be very unappealing to the vast majority of men. And I know that might be upsetting for you to hear, Megyn, but it's just true.
All right, so let's sum this all up. Kelly says that Walsh shouldn't tell women how to live their lives and that women should be career-oriented if they want to. She also says that many young conservative women she talks to can't find a man who wants a career-oriented woman.
Walsh, on the other hand, claims that men aren't attracted to women primarily because of how successful they are in their careers, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't be ambitious. This, Walsh says, is a fundamental difference between what attracts men and women to each other. Well, Amber, let me, before I turn this over to you, say something that I've never said on this show,
Please.
Which is, I agree with Megyn Kelly. That is very, very rare for me to be in that position, but I want to hear what you think of all this.
Okay, so, oh gosh, like I feel like I'm going to run headfirst into barbed wire here, but I actually tend to agree with Matt Walsh on this.
See, there we go. It's going to be disagreement again.
I know. Okay, so I love Megyn Kelly, and I think it's absolutely the case that, you know, there are women who value and prioritize their career over all else, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's their choice to make. But I do think Matt has a point when he says that men are not primarily attracted to women because of their job title or the amount of money that they make. And I think it can be unappealing to the type of men who want to get married and have children to know that perhaps their wife would not step away from a career to help raise the children or would be reluctant to stay home as a stay-at-home mom. And I think that's just the reality of biological differences.
I think we're all going to run into barbed wire on this one. I mean, the thing that I have an issue with primarily about what Walsh says is that I think he's extrapolating what he wants, and he is, he married a long time, and he can seek whatever he wishes in a spouse or mate, but to what men want writ large. Now, Megyn Kelly is making a slightly different argument specifically about conservative men. Walsh is making these sweeping statements that men are not attracted to women, not generally attracted to career-driven women. And I just think that's nonsense. It may be true that certain men would prefer a more quote-unquote trad wife type role, and it may be true that other men think differently about that. But he seems to me I do think that there is, in the way he talks about it, an implicit moral scolding of women who work outside the home or who are ambitious in their careers. And and here's where I agree with Megyn Kelly, there is, I think, the implication that you are making yourself unattractive by doing that. And I think that that is a firstly incorrect message to put out, but also a potentially damaging one, especially for women who are of a more conservative disposition and might seek the same in a spouse.
Yeah, I think it is a little nuanced in that it's not about women wanting to have a career or being ambitious, but it's about the choice that you ultimately make when you start a family and when you decide to have children. And I think it's fair to say that the average man, and I know I'm generalizing, but I think it's fair to say that the average man probably envisions some kind of more traditional arrangement where the woman stays home with the kids and the man is the breadwinner. And a lot of women like that arrangement too. And it's not about being unattractive, but it's about, I think, a woman's priorities. And if her priority is to continue working and drop the kids off at daycare, I think it's reasonable for a man to say, I'm not compatible with you because I want to marry someone who is going to take an active role in raising the kids.
I would, in the specifics of the example that you just outlined, I would agree with you that it is not a wrong decision for a man in that circumstance to say, no, that's a sort of fundamental difference, and therefore it goes to quite a fundamental issue in our lives, and therefore there is incompatibility. What I object to in Walsh's case is that he didn't seem to me to reflect any of the nuance that you have just done, and his argument seemed to be that there is a right way and a wrong way of doing this, or there is a way of women being focused on their careers that is a turn-off to men. And I just think that that vastly oversimplifies. It's way beyond, you used the word generalization, I think. To me, that is way beyond just generalization and into a kind of almost slightly fetishistic and anachronistic view of family life, where in fact there are innumerable different ways of living a family life where both partners are satisfied professionally, romantically, all the other ways, and it does not require fitting into Matt Walsh's template. And so Megyn Kelly's crack about the Jesus to women or whatever, I think is I assume, emanating from that sense that he's just seeking to dictate terms that he might like and he is free to like that are not even remotely universal, and potentially making women, conservative women in particular, feel uneasy about very legitimate choices.
I think sometimes there's something to be said for the hard truth. And I view this as the hard truth. It is a hard truth that if you are a conservative woman and you want to marry a conservative man, you likely are going, if you want that to be successful and if you want to raise a conservative family, you probably are going to have a hard time finding a conservative man to marry if you are not willing to put career aside to raise kids. It may not be what they want to hear. It might be going against the way that they envision their lives, and they're allowed to feel that way, and they're certainly allowed to prioritize marrying someone who doesn't want them to do that. But what I actually think Matt is getting at here is a deeper biological fact that is actually, despite his perhaps harsh delivery, intended to help those women. I really do believe that.
I don't know how easy it is to separate it from the harsh delivery. And I also wonder, you know, the conversation here has focused a lot on the raising of children. And that wasn't all that he was talking about. He was talking about having a focus on career and being ambitious as inherently unattractive things.
I think it was a little differently phrased than that. It was more that they don't view that as a primary driver of why they're attracted to a woman. So like a woman typically would favor having a man who is ambitious, who can provide for a family, whereas Matt Walsh says when a man is picking a mate, they're not looking at the woman's earning potential or her ability to propel herself through her career, but he's looking at some of these other factors. So it's not that they're mutually exclusive, but it's not the thing that men prioritize when deciding who they want to marry.
But if they are not mutually exclusive, his bigger argument and the harshness with which it is put seem to me then inappropriate, because if your argument is, well, it's more nuanced than that, and these things are compatible, they may not be the number one thing for men, and they may more frequently be the number one thing for women. That is one argument. That is different from saying that men are not attracted to women who are ambitious.
Oh, I think Megyn Kelly said that, not Matt Walsh.
Well, he said she was right, though. So, I mean, he's agreeing with that argument.
That women are not attractive. Well, again, I think it's two different things here. So what Matt Walsh is saying is that men don't prioritize a woman's career orientation as an attractive trait. And when Megyn Kelly was talking about it, she was getting into the idea of career being the first priority for women. So those are two separate things. It's one thing to say that women who are working, their job title, their earning potential doesn't really matter to the man. That's not what he's determining as whether or not he's attracted to a woman. Megyn Kelly is getting into something which is a little bit different, which is that a woman who thinks her career is perhaps the purpose of her life, the thing that gives her life meaning, and is a priority over things like family and children, that is not attractive to a man. And I actually agree with Matt Walsh on that point too.
Yeah, but then you see, there is a question, I think, about, you just said they're attractive to a man. And then the example that we were talking about earlier was a conservative woman seeking a conservative man. So this is where it does, I think, get tricky. Obviously, there are lots of very career-focused women who are married, who are happily married, who are attractive to their spouses. Now, if you're talking about someone who has the social attitudes of a Matt Walsh, then he would not be seeking that kind of woman as his spouse. Okay, but this gets back to where we started off, which is that I think he is overgeneralizing in a vast way what men want, if that's a blanket term, and then when he's called on it, taking sort of refuge in the idea that, well, I'm really meaning people who are conservative or socially conservative. What he's basically saying is people who agree with me.
It is fair to say, though, that young men have gotten more conservative over the past 10 years. And there have been a number of studies, including one on Medium and one published in the New York Times, that show that young millennials and Gen Z men actually do have more conservative attitudes towards things like a traditional family structure of a woman being a stay-at-home mom. So in that sense, if the majority of young men, who are the men most likely to be seeking a marriage, do agree with those values, then I think he's actually right to make that generalization.
So I'll make a final Team Megyn
I'll let you
point
get the
here,
last point.
which is unusual, which is that I think she made the point in one of the clips we played about the idea that are the changes that you just outlined sort of organic, or are they just a reaction to whatever, social changes, or are those being accelerated by people on the online male right who are putting forth ideas that I think she thinks are unhealthy, I would say.
Okay.
There we go. Up next, remember all those drones flying over New Jersey? Apparently it's not over. Stay with us.